All right, so this is going to be a review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It's the third Ant-Man movie. People aren't really liking this movie, and from what I know of, a lot of people don't like the other two either. I like those other two. I like Paul Rudd in this role, and I like the shrinking and growing and things like that. So I like those. I like the second one less though. Like some of the comedy really didn't work in that second one and things like that. So I had issues with that one, but I like both the other two. So I'll talk about how I feel about this one in a second. It's directed by Peyton Reed. I might end up spoiling some things, so you've been warned. I actually watched all of Loki yesterday in preparation for this, and looking back, I didn't really need to do that. I feel like you get enough of Kang and what he's about, his backstory, from this movie. This could be your introduction to Kang, and you'll be just fine. So looking back on it, I didn't really need to do that. So in this, Paul Rudd once again plays Scott Lang, Ant-Man. He's walking around. He's famous now because of everything that happened in Endgame and all that, and saving the world and all that. He gets free stuff. People take pictures of him, things like that. Hope, once again, played by Evangeline Lilly. She's doing other things, helping the world in other ways other than superheroing. And Cassie, the daughter, played by Catherine Newton, she's in jail because she's taking part in some protests and things like that. And she's disappointed in Scott for not getting involved in other ways and not really worrying about heroing right now. He's just enjoying the fame and his book and things like that. And clearly there's some issues there because they go back and forth, and she keeps bringing up the fact that he wasn't around, even though obviously it wasn't his fault. But so there's kind of some things there, and they need to reconnect over the course of this movie. And so they go down in the basement, and Cassie shows the device that she made that will send a signal down to the quantum realm. She turns it on, they get sucked into the quantum realm. And then at that point, Janet, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, she then lets them in on some things that she never told them about the quantum realm, where there's other creatures that live down there and things like that. And there's a conqueror that they're fighting against, which turns out to be Kang, that has taken over the place because he can't leave. I didn't like this the whole movie, right? So this will be the first Ant-Man movie that I'm on you guys' side that is not good. But I did really like one aspect, and it was good enough for me to not like trash this thing, but we'll get into it. I think it's shot okay for the most part. I think it's acted okay, once again, for the most part. I still like Paul Rudd in this role. Scott Lang, I still like the character. He has some good moments, I think, with Cassie. There's kind of something that keeps it from being as good as it can be, and we'll get back to that, but I did like their dynamic for the most part. There's some interesting creatures and creature designs. I didn't care about any of them, but the actual characters, but there was some designs I liked. There's some back and forth with the characters, mainly the characters in the Ant-Man group, that I thought were funny. There were some parts of this movie that I did legitimately laugh. The effects, at times it looks really good. At times the creatures look good and things like that in the background. But at times it feels very fake, right? Even small things like him being able to, the MCU and these helmets. At points where his helmet comes on and comes off because it does it on its own. That looked really fake at times. There's points where he grows and shrinks, mainly when he grows. That I was like, that doesn't really look right. And then there's points where, like Thor: Love and Thunder, where I don't know if they shot this with the volume or whatever, but where the backgrounds don't really look all that real. So there are other points. So the effects are hit or miss, but there are some really good things with the creatures, I think. And the main good thing about this movie, the thing that keeps me from really going in on it, is Kang. And that is played by, once again, by Jonathan Majors. I think that's how you say his name. He, in Loki, at the end of Loki, he was chewing up scenery like crazy, and I wanted him to tone it down. Right? I was like, man, this is too much. Somebody please tell this brother to tone it down just a little. It's a lot. Too much. Here he's more like what I expected him to be when they got to him at the end of Loki, where he talks real low and quiet like this, other than when he starts to get upset, because he has this feeling about him that's regal, that's powerful, all-knowing, and things like that. That's what you expect from this kind of character, especially with what he can do. And I think he did a great job with that in this. He's easily the standout. I honestly, so much of this movie I didn't really care about, but when it got to him and his backstory, and especially, you know, telling the story of him and Janet and what's going on with that and why he's stuck there and things like that, I really enjoyed that a lot. Right, I really like this character. I actually think, other than some certain things that happen towards the end, I think he's the best villain we've gotten since Thanos. I think he is amazing. That being said, though, everything else in this movie is about as uninteresting as possible. So we start off with Cassie making this machine, and automatically I'm like, well, this feels contrived because how is she able to do this? How is she able to make this when the genius Hank Pym, who did help her make it, that's what they say in this movie, he didn't make it when his wife was missing in the quantum realm for 30 years. So automatically, I'm thinking, so in just within a little amount of time or however long it's been, because she did mention she wanted to use it to talk to Scott when he was gone for 5 years in the quantum realm, for however long it took for her to make this thing. Even with his help, it doesn't make sense that he was never able to make it himself. But then you get to the place with all this stuff going on. You meet the creatures. Like I said, good designs and good CGI for the most part on those creatures. But I didn't care about any of them. There's a leader in this movie that's leading the resistance against Kang. Every time she pops up, I'm reminded she's in the movie. She's barely a character. There's a character that makes a bunch of jokes about having holes. Like I said, there's some comedic moments in here, but there's some jokes in here that are just lame. It's probably about half and half. And they have this whole freedom fighter thing going on. And you would think that you would get me interested in these characters or invested in these characters because this is what's going on. And that's what's the main issue of this is he's this tyrannical ruler and we can't let him leave, but he's taken over and he's oppressing the people in the quantum realm, but you don't care about any of them or their plight. You barely even focus on them. It's to the point where Ant-Man, and that's a thing in this movie where Cassie says he doesn't care about the people. I don't think he does, right? It seems like he's just trying to get his people, his family out of there. And so I already don't care about the characters. So with the main character not caring about them either, it makes me not care about them even more. So when this big climactic thing happens with these people, yeah, let's rise up. And Cassie gives this speech, this lame speech. It's not on the level of Captain America at all. I don't really care. It was to the point where Kang was killing them. And not only did I not feel bad for them, I was enjoying it. I was like, yes, because I loved the character. I just liked to see that he was doing shit. So that was an issue. It was boring as fuck when Kang wasn't there, especially towards the beginning. She has a moment where she meets Bill Murray. I don't know where Bill Murray, where his character went. I don't know if I couldn't see whether he died. I assume he must have because he never shows back up again. I forgot he was in the movie. So, there's that too. There's parts of this that just felt so contrived. There's something that happens with these ants and the way that they explain it. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You think I'm just gonna go along with that? I guess, but it was lame. The climax of this movie is lame. It goes down to everything comes down to Ant-Man growing big. Man, like, well, he's grown big before. There's not much of a climax here if that's all the hero really has to do. but whatever. We'll go past that. Cassie, this actress, Catherine Newton. Obviously, the character's been recast and things like that. Because of that, there's a disconnect with me believing this is the same character. They make references to things that happened in the other two movies. It doesn't feel like this is the same character, so I'm not really all that into it. Like I said, they do have moments, Scott and Cassie, but I didn't really truly feel them because of that aspect of it. And I didn't think the actress was all that good. She's not terrible, but she's not all that good. At points, it feels like she's posing. At points, it feels like the dialogue is unnatural from her to where it just feels like somebody just giving lines. And like I said, that speech was lame. Oh, MODOK. People were already making fun of him. He looks like trash. People are already making fun of him from the trailer and memeing him and things like that. It is so much worse in the movie. I think this is one of the worst aspects of the movie because and this has only happened a couple of times. I was hurting watching this character because of second hand embarrassment. I felt so bad for this actor having to do this. I really did, especially with the backstory as contrived and lame as that was. I felt so bad for him. I felt like, man, if I was this actor, I would take a break for like a month. Because how do you go out in public? It would be like the opposite of what happened with Scott at the beginning of this movie. How do you go out in public? This is, maybe the movie's not that big, but it's part of a big franchise. And you got this going on, especially social media just going in. Man, I felt so bad for this dude, man. Especially that thing with Cassie, I thought that was awful. And he's not even that in that much of the movie. He doesn't really do that much until the very end. You might as well, and it seeming like they're not going to do anything potentially with them going forward. So it's like, why even do it? Why? It looks like shit, and you didn't do anything. That was for me probably the worst part of the movie. Kang is awesome. I really like him, and I like his backstory. I think he's better here than he was at the end of Loki and things like that. I like his powers. I like where it might be going, but the climax is lame. I don't care about any of the other characters, these freedom fighters and things like that. I didn't care. Without Kang, you might as well just call this some kind of generic sci-fi movie that you just come across on TV. And I found it really uninteresting, boring and uninteresting, and just laughably bad at points whenever Kang isn't on screen. But yeah, this is not a good movie. I'm gonna give it a rental anyway because Kang was just enough to rise to mediocre level for this thing. But for the most part, you don't need to see this. You really don't. You don't need to see this in the theater at the very least. Uh, Based on quality, based on it being important to the Avengers movies going forward, yeah, you have to, unfortunately. But for the most part, you could probably be done with it. You can skip it. But anyway, that's it. That's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It's not good. It's definitely not good. Subscribe, and we're done.